how does somebody get into what you guys do and into the metals world?
We are hiring around the clock. There's always an opening here. Virtually always an opening here. If there's not one run this week, give it a month and one will be out. I was a teacher at Arkansas State University in the welding program,
Right.
and I'm starting to see get on and then learn, get enough to get in the door. So we have a program called a 5-8-10. You can come in as a welder's apprentice. Young men are getting those jobs, and potentially women, with minimal. I've taken shop class in high school. I was taught to weld in high school. I practiced just a small amount of time, but they show a work ethic. They say the right things on their resume in their interview. We get them in here as basically a laborer, and those have really been working out. If they've got the right work ethic and they're working hard. On rainy days, it's raining here now, and I have one back in the shop. We start teaching them stuff. They start practicing, and you have 1 year to make your first weld test. Once you pass that test, now you're an 8 in the WG side. Then you have another year to pass the next series of tests. And before you know it, we're moving you into a journeyman welder program. I really believe in those types of apprenticeship programs, starting in, even if it's someone that's interested in electrical, go to the big electrical shops in your area and say, hey, I want to do this. Can I start out sweeping the floors?
Right.
And if they see a work ethic, we're looking for hungry workers. If we see you doing the small things right, I'm going to grab you and say, hey, come over here. Let me show you what I'm doing.
Are you going to teach them how to make that dime edge or whatever it is on the weld? Is that
I'm still teaching myself?
Oh, really?
No, I'm good enough. I tell everybody that I'm never going to lose the contest, but I'm probably never going to win one either. I'm a solid B+, A-.
What type of welding do you all do? Is it arc, or what are some of the types of welding you all do?
So with what we're doing, we have a pipe shop that's excellent. All these boats have water pipe. There's air. There's pipe running through all of these boats, and other equipment. We don't just work on the vessels. We work on the equipment that goes with the vessels. So the dozers, the excavators, they all have real specialized equipment that we work on, and that requires all the welding. You name it, we're out here doing it. So if you're doing a pipe job and that pipe is nice, just beautiful stainless steel, you're going to be TIG welding that stainless steel.
And what is TIG welding?
So TIG welding is tungsten inert gas, and it means you've got one hand with a tungsten, literally the metal weldment is in this hand, and it's supplied with electricity, and you're going to have a filler metal in the other hand, and you're working them both. And that's where you get on Instagram and you see these beautiful welds and these beautiful patterns. These guys are TIG welding. So we do a lot of TIG welding. Totally different group of certifications. Most of my guys have multiple certifications, because I might be TIG welding one day, I might be pipe welding the next. So when you leave here, if you decide to move on, one of my guys is going to have sheets of certifications that he's went out and got. The welding procedure for shipyards and heavy metal, so your railroads, your big steel structures, is called flux core. Flux core is an operation that we use a gun. So you hear of MIG welding. MIG welding is typically run at a lower heat, less volts. Your flux core is hotter, it's more penetrant, and it's typically more forgiving. And we run miles of that stuff in shipyards. And a lot of, if somebody's listening, they've had somebody, that they know that's in the railroads, it's kind of the same, but that's what you're going to see. And that's what you want to be good at if you want to excel in a place like this.
Tell me about the teams that you guys have, because when I was growing up in Middle Georgia, I had this friend whose stepfather was he was a welder for I won't say the name of the company, but they make school buses. And he was one of the hardest working people I know. And it was amazing. And he would get out and I know it gets hot, especially in the Southeast. But I know that just being around him, he was the type of person that just one of the hardest working people I'd ever met in my life. I don't know if I've met maybe one or two other people in my life who I've ever seen work as hard as him. But tell me about the type of people you have in your crew there and the culture there.
So we need a lot of guys to keep this ship running. Right now we're somewhere I think just under 35. We might be 33, we might be 34. We're young right now. There's things that are happening in the trades. A lot of that old knowledge is retiring off. I'm fairly young as far as where I'm at. I've worked for the Corps for 5 years and I'm one of our leadermen. We lack a lot of gray hair, but what that means is you can be young and a go-getter, be on job 2 or 3 years and pick some of this stuff up and be leading a crew. The way we set ourselves up is we have multiple jobs going on all over the yard. We have jobs outside the yards. A lot of times we're working in Texas, New Orleans on projects. So you would be set up job specific. If Brandon, you're a great pipe welder, but you don't really have any leadership, you're just a young guy that's good at welding pipe, you're going to be paired with potentially a laborer, maybe another welder that's pretty good, and then you're going to have a crew. You're going to have a crew leader. Our crew leaders we call fitters. And fitters make sure the project fits. So you're responsible for interpreting blueprints and bringing all the fabrication process together. And we might have 8 different crews like that working on 8 completely different jobs out on this yard. And then 2 more in Georgia working on something. And my position is over those teams. I'm the guy on the ground actually checking the work, driving the pace of the work, answering questions, helping. And then I report to my bosses, which would be the chief and the assistant chief. So right now, the vessel from Vicksburg's huge. We've got 40 laborers on it. We've got 12 welders and fitters, and then 2 leadermen are working on that vessel. That's a huge project. 50 some odd people on one vessel working at the same time. But more typically, when we were rebuilding the Wilmington Curry Tuck vessel, it was very typical to be broken down 14 people and break those 14 down into 3 crews, depending on what work was being done that day.
Tell me about that sense of accomplishment that you all get from because you're essentially going in and you get a vessel and you do some repairs on it. I mean, tell me about how does that feel, like that sense of accomplishment from knowing you put your hands on something and work on it.
I came from a background where I did welding, farm type welding. I taught at ASU. I welded for the Memphis Area Transit Authority. And those jobs are extremely monotonous. Teaching welding is rewarding in its own way, but you're welding on the same types of things every day. And it's very short, not very complex projects. So to come out here and to see boats larger than football fields out on your dry dock, I tell everybody when I try to describe it, I say, think of a football stadium that sinks and you pick a ship up on it. And right now, the vessel we have hangs over both sides. So now I went from welding on bus parts and teaching young people to weld on 6-inch plates to now I'm working, sometimes your canvas is 50 yards long. It's insane. And to come in, all these people, they need us desperately. Their boats typically have multiple holes in it, multiple points of failure because of rot or damage. So we're going in and we're literally saving the day.
Oh, wow.
This vessel right now is part of Armor One, and they lay concrete on the Mississippi River. Their season is depending on us getting this boat back together and out on mission. And so all the way up to the general in our division, everybody's counting the days down for us to get this out there. So when we sink that sucker and it goes back on its way, it's a real sense of pride. And then we know that the next one coming needs us just as bad. I tell my guys all the time, this is never going to end. Everybody needs us. Everybody's waiting on us to jump on their next project. And that feeling is it's something that we'll all get to brag to our grandkids about. When people say that they're needed, I tell my guys, I say, everybody's going to tell your kids and your grandkids how important you were. And here we actually have the opportunity to make it true.
Oh, wow. There's because a lot of these barges, the government doesn't just buy a new one every year. I mean, you buy one, it's an investment, and it's What do you think the oldest one you've ever worked on was?
We've got several. They're stamped 1912.
Oh, wow.
Yes, sir. I don't know. That's the common number I see, the 19 teens. So the dredge, that's the counterpart to the Hurley. So the Hurley's based out of Memphis. We've got another large dredge, not quite as big as the Hurley. That's the Jadwin, and it's based out of Vicksburg. And they are the workhorses of the Mississippi River. The Jadwin was originally built in 1934.
Wow.
Yes, sir. So it comes in and you see rivets and things that were literally built in the 30s, and we're cropping that out one section at a time and renewing it. They can't spend a lot of time here. We don't have time and they don't have time. They can't be here for 4 years and us replace the whole vessel. So we determine the worst sections, we fix that part, send them on their way, and do it all again next year.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. I mean, and to get to touch something that is that old and to be able to repair it and make it better and keep it running for hopefully another, what is that, like 100+ years? I mean, 1912, that's over 111 years old or whatever, if my math.
I keep the rivets to these old vessels in my desk, so I've got a few. I try to save one.
Oh, really?
Yeah.